Hello and welcome to this week's edition of The Author's Eye with me, your host, Derek M. Cartwright, and the very talented science fiction writer, if I may be so bold, Sally Amelia. Hello, Sally.
Hi, Mark. It's good to see you again.
Hello, hello, hello. Right, so come on, tell us what's been going on in your literary world this week.
Sweet. Well, so this week I thought I'm still on the quest for getting my fourth audiobook out, and so I've got this lovely audiobook narrator called Lazarus, and you remember last week that I might have taken his name a little bit in vain, and that I'd sent him some money to do some re-recordings,
Oh,
and then gone
yes,
onto
yes.
Instagram to find out he was in a bar.
Yeah, yeah,
And I thought, okay, I shouldn't have looked at Instagram. Anyway, this week, he's due to send me the recordings this week, and I happen to be on Instagram, and he's actually in Las Vegas, and I'm thinking like, and he's in Las Vegas with his mum, so I'm thinking like, oh, okay, so I'm not sure when this is recordings, but
yeah.
then rather excitingly, he posted a video this morning, and he was in Las Vegas to record an audiobook, I think. So he posted a video of him recording somebody else's audiobook,
Yeah.
but it was quite exciting because it was actually a production team. So it was an all singing, all dancing audiobook where they had four actors, including one sort of named actor, who were actually recording it in a proper recording studio. But I
Yeah.
got very excited about this because I thought, like, well, I'm pretty sure. Well, I don't know. I need to check, but I think my book was the first one that he ever recorded. So,
Right.
based on the experience of recording Born of Empire, he got this amazing gig, and I just think that that's amazing.
Yeah,
And
but
I
it
just
still means he hasn't actually done
thought,
your
you're my second book. I'm
that
so,
you've paid for.
so grateful, and so many people have told me this is going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
I'm not believing them.
Right.
I'm keeping the faith here.
So
So
as
that was
it's
a good thing.
Lazarus, and
Yeah.
in the interests of Richard, who would normally be part of this
Yes.
little podcast, is it fair to say that Lazarus is now back from the audio recording dead? Come
Well, I
on.
think we can say he is. Yes, he's definitely raised, in my opinion, this week.
Oh, lovely. Tish. Right, that's it. That was dead funny. Right,
Yeah.
let's stop this now. Stop now, because we've got some important stuff to talk about,
Yes.
which is around world building.
Yeah, we're doing
So,
world building this week.
yeah,
Yeah.
so what I thought I'd do is I'm going to fire off some stuff at you, and then thought maybe with your experience, maybe some examples, something
Yep.
from
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
uh, certainly current TV or something like that might
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've just gone a few tips, as it were. I've just done jotted down about 8 tips or something to do with world building.
Okay.
So what I think one of the key things is don't be frightened to draw from real life cultures. And what I mean by that is, thinking about geography, you don't necessarily have to create brand new geographical sort of geomorphological formations or anything else. Use what you're familiar with. It's a way because your reader will also be familiar with that sort of thing. Think about technology levels. Think about, is there a religion and all that sort of stuff. And I'm just wondering whether certainly with your dodecahedron series, science fiction, there's an awful lot of um, cultural references and things like that in relation to your world building in that series of books, isn't there?
Yes. I mean, I didn't. I've been writing the books for a long time, so it's been very evolutionary. I mean, in the early drafts, I was just making it up, and then latterly, I decided it was definitely going to be future Earth, and then I set book one in London,
Yeah,
which was quite good then, because then you start getting maps out, and
yeah,
this really grounds you. And then you think, okay, well, which monuments are likely still to be in London in 100 years' time? And then I put a massive dome over London as well, which was quite fun. But again, I actually remember getting a printout of the map of London and then taking a glass, like a whiskey glass, and then
right.
putting it over and saying, right, okay, there's my dome. and then drawing, so sort of moving around the map. And so I thought, okay, that's it. And I sort of drew a circle around it.
Yeah.
And then I thought, right. And then there's this opening sequence where he says it's over the districts of Barbican and Spitalfields and this, and I did that all from my map, which was rather good. But it means that once you've got a European destination, you know what you're doing with your
Yeah.
architecture, which is quite good. You know what you're doing with the underground. We have some underground sequences, which is quite good. So a lot of it then is sort of like is just fitting in with it. But then of course I've had built at least two more worlds which are not Earth. So then I've been able to let rip a bit more and just go with what I feel like.
Yeah.
I think the one thing I enjoyed the most was building the Emperor's ship. So we've got an emperor who's all powerful. Now, it has to be said that there is a reason behind my madness on this, isn't that when Earth and the 12 planets of the dodecahedral joined the United Races, when they were contacted by aliens and became part of a bigger community, they were told that they had to nominate one person to represent the whole of
Right.
humanity, all 12 planets. And this actually caused a lot of trouble. They actually went into civil war to try and figure this out. And from the ashes of that, this royal family emerged who've been, and they, which was, and they sort of said, right, we're going to have an emperor. And people were so fed up with the war, they said, yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with an emperor. And that's how they ended up with an emperor. But the emperor was only ever supposed to be this figurehead that represented, humanity at these rare occasions where they had to send somebody to the center of the galaxy. But of course, he didn't do that. He took the power and he ran with it. So yeah.
Oh, it's
So the great
interesting.
thing,
It's
yeah,
interesting because that's like my point three, which
yes,
is around when when you're doing world building, to think about how the society works.
yeah,
Religious based monarch, feudal systems or whatever, economic hierarchy. You've just highlighted very succinctly how you envisioned yours with, you know, internal power struggles, wars, whatever, to try and get to that point where you've got the emperor, because that's how that future society works, and that's quite
yes.
an emotive view in terms of your world building, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it quite a few times. I mean, obviously, Napoleon emerged from the French Revolution after they had about 20 years of, French Revolution before he emerged,
Yeah,
at the beginning of the 1800s. But we've also seen people like General de Gaulle, who was a very powerful leader in France post World War II.
yeah,
And people look when they've had a period of severe disruption to a very strong leader to take them through. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Cool. Okay, so what about the idea then that you need to create maybe or invent strange or unusual customs as a way of creating a hook for your reader? So I'm thinking about language, maybe. I mean, a friend of mine, she wrote a book which is about what happens to you after you die, basically. So she envisioned this world, a spirit world where all of the souls went to after death, and there was a hierarchy within that, and it was all quite structured. But it was, it was all very nice, and it was all very learn. People went off and learned things. They learned how to play a musical instrument. They've never played one. How to paint. They'd be taught by Picasso or whoever, and all this kind of stuff. But one of the key things that she did within that story was she wrote and created her own language, which was there was she had this idea of the ancient ones, so that the forerunners to all of these spirits, human spirits, and all the rest of it, the forerunners of that were like the gatekeepers, the guardians, the ancient ones that set it all out and laid it all out for us, and they had their own language, and I found that quite fascinating, and that she'd created and gone to the trouble of, I mean, she was a linguist by training, but it was interesting that she went to all the trouble to create a language, which I'm not sure the story needs, well, it seems a bit strange. I'm not sure the story needed the language, but I
I
thought it
think
was an interesting way of hooking you as a reader in.
it sort of it sets her fiction in a certain period.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
the person we have to blame for this, of course, is J.R.R. Tolkien, who
Yeah.
was obviously a linguist, and I think he was I don't know correctly what his title was, but he was studying ancient cultures,
Yeah.
Nordic cultures, and Nordic languages at Oxford, wasn't he? He was at
I think
Oxford.
it was
That's
Oxford. Yeah, I think it's right.
yes,
He's
he was at
professor
Oxford,
of
and
classics, was it something?
so when I mean, it took him. I think it did take him about 30 years to put together The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings because he was sort of like tootling away with it. But he spent a lot of time
Oh yeah,
actually
years.
writing the backstory and devising these languages and then writing poetry in
Yeah.
Elvish.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was younger, it was de facto obligatory. If you wrote fantasy, you went away and you started creating languages. And I think it wasn't just obviously in Star Trek as well. They had
Oh
their
yeah.
languages there, particularly for was it the Vulcans? They spoke in
Well,
a certain way,
Klingon is probably the most,
and the Klingons, yes. And
yeah,
not only did the Klingon language become quite popular, but then people
yeah.
started documenting it, and people actually made lexicons of Klingon, and now there's
Absolutely, yeah.
whole populations of America who seem to actually speak the language as well,
Every
which
Star
is
Trek convention has a Klingon language school sort of thing.
yeah. So
Yeah.
there was that, but I think actually I saw that sort of peter out in that a lot of people came to the conclusion that a lot of the languages that people were covering were probably not that good. And there was a reason why they
Yeah.
weren't that good. Not everyone is a
Yeah, I
language or
mean,
linguist,
yeah,
Cambridge.
when I wrote Tahir the Elemental, I set that in Earth's prehistory. So, and I debated at the time about whether to, because they wouldn't obviously speak our language now. Um, but then I thought, I'm not sure as a reader, do I want to work that hard to try and have to not quite
Yeah.
learn a new language, but to have a new language explained to me. So, and again, it's another a question for yourself. If you were writing, when you're writing your science fiction and you've got alien species and all the rest of it, they all seem to talk English at the end of the day, don't they? Because we need, as a
Yes. Well,
reader, we need to be able to understand, don't we?
yeah. I mean, in my get around from that is that I haven't got that many alien species. I've got the powerful Varanchi who actually speak by telepathy. And
Oh yeah,
actually, there's probably a question there as to actually whether or not they're speaking to you at all, or whether or not they're just using telepathy
yeah,
to communicate with you. But it sounds like speech. We're going to find a lot about more and more about them in the next novel, so I'll probably explore some of that.
yeah,
But what I find interesting about language, and this is going away from the world building, is that I like my characters to speak differently.
yeah,
Um, and because if you have the discipline of making your characters speak slightly differently, or to represent different backgrounds, different levels of education, different regions, something, then when you have like a piece of dialogue, you can rely a little bit on the fact that their speech patterns are different, so
yeah,
that your reader knows who's speaking, even if you're not always putting tags on it to say
yeah.
said so and so, said so and so. Because they should be able to hear it in their head that the different people are
Yeah,
speaking. So
you're giving
that's
each character its own voice, aren't you?
yes. So you have to.
Yeah,
So world building is not just about the settings. It's about when you've got a character who's got a certain background, then he's going to speak in a certain way, and that's self-evident, really, isn't it?
oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's another just to on a touch on that subject, though. I think even from a world building point of view, at the end of the day, the stories are about characters, aren't they?
Yes.
It's how the characters interact, and I think um, one of the main things if you are when you are world building is to basically start with your characters. So instead of creating a fictional world from nothing, you can think about when you're creating that world, when you're doing your world building, to look at how it affects the characters' arc. Maybe how it, how it interacts, your protagonist, your antagonist, or whatever. And I think world building can play a key part in that. So starting with the character, thinking about how this character is going to be exist in this particular world is a key part of that world building
Mhm.
kind of stuff. I mean, do you think that in modern day examples on television or things like that that you can think of that might highlight that kind of thing?
Well, the one that's just come out this month is the House of Guinness.
Right,
And it's interesting there that they've got the House of Guinness, which is a very wealthy family. And even within the wealthy family, one of the sons has been to Eton and has spent quite a lot of time in London. So he speaks like an Englishman, whereas the
right.
rest of them have still got an Irish brogue, but their
Uh,
brogue is not as. And then they are set against the Fenians, which are the Irish independents,
yes,
and they've all got a very strong brogue. So that's one example that you can think of where they've gone all in to give the different characters
yeah.
different voices based on their social economic background or their educational background. Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
but it starts with the characters more than you need to understand the character
yes,
as a
yes,
as an introductory
as
to
a
the
direct,
story as a way.
yes,
Yeah. So, okay, so what about when you're looking at world building, are you thinking about like what levels of technology they're at? Are you looking at the legal systems associated with these? Do you sit there and go, right, I'm going to define everything, or do you adopt the approach of maybe just feeding the things in almost like a drip feed approach?
yeah. I drip feed it in. I drip feed it in when I need to, because I think the worst thing you can do is sit down and explain your entire world to
Yeah,
people in science fiction story. You have to sort of figure out what they need to know, and then you have to walk your character into that situation so that they can see it. And if
yeah.
they need to see it for the first time, then you need to figure out either you need to get another character who hasn't seen to bring the visitor from out of town. Is always very helpful in those circumstances.
Absolutely, yeah.
When you need to describe something, then you've got
Yeah.
to have the visitor from out of town that you
Yes,
can.
Dr. Foster's just turned up. Look, and he's
Yes,
not.
let me just show you for the first time. Because I've
Yeah,
been living here, but you haven't seen this before,
yeah,
and the reader needs to know this.
yeah. Yeah, well, I know within the fantasy world, of course, maps become quite a handy tool. So,
Yes, yes,
to put a map in there, even the likes of Terry Pratchett and all the rest of it, he didn't actually use maps to begin with. That was generally something that was created once the Discworld was pretty firmly established. All he did really was to say, right, okay, it's the greater two, and it's a turtle. The disc is on a turtle, on an elephant, and all this sort of stuff. And that gave you your sense of place, as it were. You knew this was a different world. Um, right. So we've got a few minutes left. So I just
yeah,
thought, um, just as I've got a couple of things mainly. The first one is when you're doing world building, I think we've sort of touched on it really, which is to say that treat world building in a way like an iceberg, so that you see, or world building, keep it less than 10%. Just as you've just intimated, drip feed it in, imply the rest of it. Give your reader um, the credence or the intelligence to be able to interpret stuff for themselves. And that way, avoid the dreaded info dump, I think would be my top takeaway. And I'm guilty of this. I know I'm guilty of this and have done in the past. And at our weekly writers
yes.
group,
It's perfectly okay in the first draft to write it all out, but it is the point of the first draft is you're explaining the story to yourself,
yeah,
and to be able to is once you can recognize that all of that crap needs to be cut out and you need to find another way of
absolutely.
telling it,
Yeah,
that's when you've got the knack of this writing
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think you ever stop, do you, with writing? I think there's always
No, I
something to
mean
be
my
learning.
my first drafts can be absolutely appalling because I'll
Yeah,
just sit there and minutely start describing something. I think like, okay, well, that's actually important, but I can't tell people it that
yeah,
way. It's got to
yeah,
go find another way of doing
yeah,
this. And so
absolutely.
it's a
Yeah,
storytelling. It's actually not the writing then. It's actually
yeah,
thinking about how you can make this interesting and engaging. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Right. Well,
Right.
I
We've
think
run out of time,
I
haven't
think
we?
that's about it for this week.
Okay.
So I thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. It's been great
It's
fun.
interesting. I mean, it's
And we
not.
only scratched the surface, really.
Oh, literally haven't scratched the surface. I mean, it's a whole. Yeah. I
Yeah.
was. But anyway, let's leave it
Okay.
there, and
Okay.
we'll say goodbye and see you all next week.
Yeah. Goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.